From perfect daughter to forgotten heir, I watched my sister take everything while I paid the price. $42,000 lost, broken promises, and a will that crushed me. Before starting this story, if you are listening from USA, please leave a comment with number 9. And if you are from another country, please leave the name of your lovely country. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to listen to more stories. I grew up in a house filled with invisible walls built not from bricks, but from favoritism and unspoken rules. My name is Sorrel, and from as early as I can remember, my family's love and attention were divided unevenly, almost painfully so. My younger sister, Marissa, seemed to float through childhood wrapped in an endless stream of praise and indulgence, while I was left to scrape together whatever scraps of approval I could find. I was the oldest child, and with that came expectations heavier than I ever asked for. From the age of 10, I was expected to be perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect example. My parents made it clear that I was the responsible one, the one who should pave the way for Marissa. They told relatives proudly, "Sorrel is mature. She doesn't need the extra things like Marissa does." It was a phrase I heard over and over, a cold justification that left me feeling invisible. I remember my 16th birthday clearly, while my friends celebrated with parties and gifts that sparkled with excitement. My present was a calculator for my advanced math class. Alongside it came a lecture on saving money and preparing for college. Meanwhile, 3 years later, Marissa's 16th was a lavish weekend at a luxury resort, complete with designer clothes and the very car I had saved summers to buy on my own. My parents' praise for her was loud and proud. My own achievements were simply expected, barely noticed. My father, a quiet man who worked as an architect, rarely spoke about the differences between us, but his silence spoke volumes. On rare occasions when I did something noteworthy, he would quietly slip me $20 a small, secret acknowledgement that never translated into true equality at home. This pattern defined my childhood. I was the reliable one, the steady rock, the background, while Marissa lived in the spotlight. The more I succeeded, the more invisible I became. The more I gave, the less I was seen. This invisible divide carved deep scars of resentment and loneliness, feelings I tucked away behind a practiced smile. Growing up under these shadows, I learned early that love in my family came with conditions. Responsibility was a burden placed on my shoulders, while Marissa was wrapped in care and indulgence. I carried the weight of being the good daughter without the warmth or recognition that should have accompanied it. Looking back, those years shaped not only my childhood, but the woman I was becoming, a woman quietly furious, yearning to be seen, and unknowingly preparing for the fight that would one day change everything. The transition from high school to college was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to prove myself beyond the shadows of my childhood. My name is Sorrel, and stepping onto the sprawling campus of Willowbrook University was both exhilarating and daunting. Unlike many of my classmates, I had to balance the demands of rigorous academics with the weight of financial responsibility that no one else seemed to share. Thanks to scholarships and relentless determination, I was able to cover a large portion of my tuition. Still, the remaining expenses forced me to work 30 hours a week at the campus library, shelving books and managing late fees. The modest paycheck was a lifeline, allowing me to pay rent for a small, cramped apartment just off campus and cover basic living costs. Every dollar I earned was hard-fought, a stark contrast to the comfort I knew my sister Marissa would enjoy when she arrived years later. Marissa entered the same university 3 years after me, but her experience was worlds apart. While I counted every cent, she moved into a premium dorm suite fully paid by our parents, received a generous monthly allowance, and never worried about a single bill. When I finally dared to ask why such disparities existed, my mother's answer was swift and cold. "Sorrel is good with money. Marissa needs more help to succeed." Those words stung deeply, revealing a family dynamic where affection was meted out not by love but by utility. Throughout those early years, I pushed myself to excel. Late nights studying for exams, weekends spent working double shifts, none of it seemed to close the gap between my sister's privileged path and my own uphill climb. Still, I was proud to be building something real, a career foundation rooted in my own sweat and sacrifice. It was also during this time that I met Daniel, a software engineer with a quiet strength and gentle understanding. At a holiday gathering hosted by mutual friends, he saw past the carefully constructed armor I wore. On our third date, after I brushed off yet another story about my family, he looked me in the eye and said, "You're allowed to be angry about how they've treated you." His words cracked open a part of me I had long tried to ignore. Despite the distance between college life and the home I left behind, I stayed in touch with my family. Weekly calls, holiday visits, birthday gifts, they were routines I maintained out of a stubborn hope for recognition that never truly came. Each interaction ended with a bittersweet blend of disappointment and resolve I would no longer seek their approval. But the pattern of uneven love and expectation persisted like a shadow I couldn't quite shake. Those college years shaped more than my education. They carved into me the resilience and quiet fury that would one day fuel the fight to reclaim my life. By the time I settled into my first job as a junior accountant in downtown Atlanta, the financial strain from my family had already begun to weigh heavily on me. My name is Sorrel, and while I was building my career, I was also unwittingly becoming the family's emergency fund, the invisible ATM no one else seemed willing to touch. Over the course of 5 years, I transferred over $40,000 to cover everything from overdue mortgage payments to unexpected medical bills. Not once was a single cent paid back. It started innocently enough. One Tuesday evening, as I was preparing dinner in my modest apartment, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Sorrel, we're behind on the mortgage. We need $7,800 to avoid foreclosure." The urgency in her voice tugged at me, and without hesitation, I dipped into my savings, the same savings I had painstakingly built for a down payment on my own home. When I asked if there was a plan to repay me, she sounded offended. "We're family. We don't need formal agreements." But the crisis never ended. 6 months later, I received calls for $2,500 to cover property taxes, then $1,800 for a new furnace. Each time, I transferred the money without question, swallowing down the growing frustration that gnawed at me. Soon, Marissa's financial troubles joined the chorus. Her car needed $3,200 in repairs. Her apartment security deposit required $2,000 more. And when a medical emergency struck, I was hit with a $4,500 bill. My parents always called me instead of handling things themselves. "Marissa's struggling," they said. "Times are hard for young people." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was only 3 years older than Marissa, yet my sacrifices seemed expected rather than appreciated. Meanwhile, my own life was put on hold. A long-planned vacation with my closest friend was canceled so I could cover the latest property tax bill. The engagement ring Daniel and I had chosen was downgraded to a simpler model to help pay Marissa's medical expenses. Daniel grew increasingly concerned. One night, after I spent an hour consoling my mother over the phone, he looked at me with clear worry. "They're taking advantage of you," he said quietly. I defended them fiercely. "They're family," I replied. "What else can I do? Let them suffer, but deep down." His words echoed louder with each new request. They knew I would bail them out, so there was no incentive to change. The pattern was clear, yet I found myself trapped, unable to break free from the role I had been cast in for so long. Eventually, I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every loan, every transfer, every broken promise. The total was staggering $42,385 over 5 years, not a single repayment. Still, I answered their calls, hoping for gratitude, recognition, some sign that my sacrifices mattered, but the silence was deafening. The burden of being their financial safety net was suffocating. Each dollar cent was a brick in the wall that held me captive, a wall I was desperate to tear down but too afraid to face. This weight shaped every decision, every relationship, and every dream I quietly shelved away, waiting for the moment I would finally reclaim my life. The day my grandfather passed away, a chapter of my life closed, and another darker one unexpectedly began. My name is Sorrel. And Grandpa James was the one family member who made me feel truly seen. Unlike my parents, he never treated me as the responsible daughter who didn't need extra care. At family gatherings, he would pull me aside, ask about my career, and listen not just with his ears, but with genuine interest. Our bond was special. He kept a photo of my college graduation on his mantle and often gifted me books about women who broke barriers in business, each with a handwritten note. Reminds me of you. When he became ill, I took time off work to care for him, organizing medications, driving him to appointments, reading to him during long evenings. His gentle squeeze of my hand and his soft words, "You're a good soul, Sorrel," still echo in my memory. When I received the call that he had passed, my heart broke. I flew home to Greenville, expecting to grieve alongside my family, but the shadows I thought I knew turned out to be deeper and darker than I ever imagined. The funeral was held in the old church he had attended for over 50 years. I sat in the front pew, flanked by my parents and sister, receiving condolences from distant relatives and friends who all spoke warmly of Grandpa James and especially of me. Each kind word reinforced the hope I carried that his will would recognize our bond. 3 days later, we gathered in the stately office of Franklin Morgan, Grandpa's longtime attorney. The room smelled of polished wood and leather, with framed photographs of sailing adventures hanging on the walls. Grandpa had told me over the years that he had made sure I was taken care of in his will. I wasn't expecting a fortune, but I trusted that his love for me would be reflected somehow. The attorney began reading the will with a solemn tone. To my daughter, Linda, and her husband, I bequeath my family home and all its contents, valued at approximately $320,000. My parents nodded, unfazed. To my granddaughter, Marissa, I leave my investment portfolio, currently valued at $175,000, and my rare coin collection, appraised at $42,000. Marissa smiled and reached for my mother's hand. Then, Franklin looked up and said, "To my granddaughter, Sorrel, I leave my collection of books, especially those we discussed together, and my fishing equipment, which brought us joy." I waited, breath held, for more, but the attorney had already moved on to smaller bequests for distant relatives. I asked, voice shaking, "Is that all?" Franklin shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, that is the entirety of your grandfather's bequest to you." The room seemed to tilt around me. Books and fishing gear. Nothing more. My mother's cold voice broke the silence. "Sorrel, this isn't the time or place to discuss this." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Grandpa James had changed his will 8 months prior, just months after I had taken on 60-hour work weeks, while my parents had daily access to him. Driving away from the attorney's office, tears blurred my vision as I sat on a bench in Lakeside Park, the same place Grandpa and I had spent countless afternoons fishing. It wasn't the money itself that broke me, it was the betrayal. Even the one person who had made me feel valued had ultimately chosen my sister over me. That evening, my best friend Sarah called. "How did it go?" "They got everything," I whispered. "Mom, Dad, Marissa, I got books and fishing gear." Sarah's voice softened. "Sorrel, he changed the will. They must have influenced him somehow. I wasn't sure what to believe anymore, but I knew one thing: I was going to find out the truth, no matter the cost." Later that night, I confronted my parents. Their guarded expressions and shifting glances spoke louder than words. My father admitted. We discussed family needs with him. It was the best decision for everyone. The words felt like daggers. "When have you ever considered what was best for me?" I demanded, anger boiling. My mother's reply was chilling. "Sorrel, you've always been good with money. Marissa needs the support more." That phrase, repeated again and again, was a cruel weapon using my strength against me, turning it into a reason to deny me what I deserved. In that moment, I realized the fight ahead would be far more brutal than I had imagined. The moment I reached my breaking point was not marked by a dramatic confrontation, but by a quiet realization that I could no longer carry the weight of my family's financial burdens alone. My name is Sorrel, and for years, I had been the invisible safety net, the relentless provider, hoping my sacrifices would one day be acknowledged, or, at the very least, respected. But after the shock of my grandfather's will and the cold dismissal by my parents, I knew something had to change. I sought guidance from Dr. Amelia Harris, a therapist specializing in family dynamics, in her softly lit office filled with calming artwork. I finally laid bare the exhaustion and betrayal that had accumulated over the years. "Sorrel," she said gently during our third session, "what you're describing isn't just financial strain. It's financial abuse. Your family has created a pattern where your resources are expected to be endless, while theirs remain untouched. That's exploitation, not support." The word hit me hard. Abuse felt extreme, but I couldn't deny it. I was trapped in a cycle of giving without receiving, of guilt and obligation manipulating every interaction. With Dr. Harris's help, I began to understand the importance of setting firm boundaries not out of selfishness, but as an act of self-preservation. At the same time, I met with Michael Carter, a financial advisor recommended by a colleague. His office, sleek and professional, was a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. "Based on your income and the amount you've been sending your family," he explained while reviewing my accounts, "you should have at least twice the savings you currently possess. The good news is, you still have time to recover once you stop the financial drain." Together, Michael and I devised a plan. First, I would immediately cease all financial support to my family. Next, I would rebuild my emergency fund, then accelerate contributions to my retirement account, and finally save for a down payment on a home, something I had put off for far too long. Michael's advice went further. Protect yourself. Consider setting up accounts your family doesn't know about. You might even freeze your credit to prevent anyone from opening accounts in your name without permission. The idea shocked me. Could my family really go to such lengths? They wouldn't do that. I protested. His firm look told me otherwise. For 2 weeks, I agonized over the email I needed to send, drafting and redrafting. I worked closely with Dr. Harris and Daniel, my partner, to ensure the message was firm yet respectful. Finally, I typed the words that would change everything. "Dear Mom, Dad, and Marissa, after careful consideration of my financial situation, I must inform you that I can no longer provide monetary assistance. The support I have given over the years has compromised my own security, and I need to prioritize my future. This decision is final. Please respect my boundary by refraining from requests, direct or indirect. I hope we can move forward with mutual respect. Love, Sorrel." I hesitated for nearly an hour before pressing send. Then, I blocked their numbers and took Daniel out to dinner, a small celebration for what felt like both an ending and a new beginning. The relief that washed over me was profound. The guilt would come later, but in that moment, I had reclaimed a piece of myself. Sunday afternoon arrived with an unsettling calm as I pulled into my parents' suburban driveway, already crowded with familiar faces. My Aunt Claire's sedan, my Uncle Henry's SUV, and even my cousin Evan's motorcycle filled the space. The house felt suffocating, every detail carefully arranged to resemble an intervention. Chairs were set in a circle in the living room, somber expressions etched on everyone's faces. My parents sat together on the sofa, with Marissa close by, her eyes red from what I assumed was rehearsed sorrow. My mother began in a formal tone. "Sorrel, we invited the family because we are deeply concerned about your recent behavior." Aunt Claire nodded solemnly. "We're worried about you, sweetheart." I stood silently, suddenly aware of what this really was not a gesture of care, but a calculated effort to pressure me into resuming my role as their financial provider. My father cleared his throat, attempting to sound reasonable. "It's unfair. Sorrel, we have supported you your entire life." I felt the sting of those words. Supported me from where I stood. I had supported them and 3 grown adults through countless crises while putting my own life on hold. Uncle Henry leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "Claire told me you refused to help with the mortgage. Is that true?" "Yes," I said simply. "After years of providing financial help with no repayment, I set a boundary. I will not continue to enable irresponsible behavior, Aunt Claire interjected sharply. But they just lost a substantial inheritance from your grandfather only months ago. I didn't hesitate. What happened to that money? A tense silence filled the room. My mother exchanged a quick glance with Marissa, who suddenly seemed fascinated by the carpet. We had expenses, my father said vaguely. Like Marissa's trip to Bali, I asked coldly. Or the kitchen remodel I noticed today when I arrived. More silence. Taking a deep breath, I gathered strength to speak the truth. You spent that inheritance the same way you spend everything else without planning for the future. And now you expect me to bail you out again? Marissa protested weakly. That's not fair. Is it? I challenged. You called me the family ATM in your Bali video. Was that fair? My mother gasped. She would never say such a thing. I have the video, I said quietly. I can play it now if anyone wants to hear. No one took me up on the offer. My father's voice hardened, reclaiming the authority he often wielded in my childhood. This has gone far enough. We're your parents. We need your help. He trailed off. The threat clear, help us. Or you're no longer part of this family. Isn't that what happened when you convinced Grandpa to cut me out of his will? I shot back, voice steady, when you decided Marissa deserved his money. But I didn't. That was different, my mother replied sharply. We had to secure Marissa's future. And what about mine? I asked, feeling the full weight of years of neglect. You've always been able to take care of yourself, she said flatly. There it was, the cruel truth of our family dynamic. Because I was strong enough to survive without their help. I was expected to do so, because Marissa wasn't. She received everything. Looking around the room at the faces of my family, I finally saw the depth of dysfunction that no confrontation could fix. I'm leaving, I said quietly. My decision stands. I will not provide financial support going forward if I'm not welcome because of that. So be it. As I reached the door, my mother called out, voice cracking. Sorrel, please. The mortgage is due tomorrow. We have nowhere else to turn. For a moment, all my old conditioning begged me to turn back to fix their problems once again. But something inside me had changed. The guilt was still there, but so was a newfound clarity. I turned, meeting my mother's desperate eyes. You already cut me out of your inheritance, I said evenly. Consider this my inheritance to myself. Without another word, I walked out the door and into the freedom I had fought so hard to claim. The aftermath of that family meeting hit me harder than I had expected. My phone exploded with messages, voicemails from my mother filled with sobbing pleas, accusing me of cruelty and betrayal. How could you say such things after all we've done for you? She begged, her voice trembling between desperation and anger. My father's texts were shorter, colder. Your behavior today was unforgivable. When you're ready to apologize, we'll talk. Marissa's messages carried a different tone, sharp and threatening. You've really crossed the line. Mom's heartbroken. Dad might end up in the hospital. If you lose the house, it's on you. Nobody's on your side anymore. For a moment, I wavered, wondering if I had become the villain in a story I didn't want to be part of. But deep down, I knew their version was a carefully crafted narrative designed to isolate me, painting me as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family instead of the exploited woman who finally set a boundary. In the days that followed, calls and texts poured in from extended relatives, some concerned, others accusatory. Family helps family. They reminded me, you can't be so heartless. Their words stung, but I felt my resolve strengthen rather than weaken. To protect my peace, I followed Dr. Harris's advice. I temporarily blocked family members, set up email filters to redirect their messages to a separate folder, and tightened my social media privacy. I even deactivated accounts where the drama was most intense. This digital barrier gave me the space I needed to breathe and reflect. Daniel became my anchor during this storm. He arrived with takeout meals and a calm presence that steadied my shaking hands and quieted my racing thoughts. My best friend, Sarah, called regularly, her encouraging words a balm to my bruised spirit. Colleagues invited me out, creating pockets of normalcy amidst the chaos. Then, unexpectedly, my Aunt Claire reached out. "Sorrel, it's me," she said hesitantly on the phone. "Please don't hang up. I'm listening." Her apology surprised me. "I didn't understand your situation fully at the family meeting. I've talked with your mother for years, but I didn't realize how far things had gone. I want you to know I support your decision to set boundaries." Her words were like a lifeline thrown across stormy seas. I wasn't alone. Others believed me. Shortly after, I received a message from my cousin Evan. "I get it." He wrote, "They did the same to me when I got my bonus a few years ago. Never paid me back either. Stay strong." These unexpected allies gave me the validation I desperately needed. With each supportive conversation and message, the fog of guilt and doubt began to lift. Through journaling, therapy, and long talks with Daniel, I processed the complex emotions swirling inside me, especially grief. "It's like they're dead to me," I confessed to Dr. Harris one afternoon. "But they're still alive, still manipulating, still trying to make me feel guilty." She nodded thoughtfully. "You're grieving the loss of an illusion, the hope they would change, that they would appreciate you, that they would treat you fairly. That loss deserves to be mourned." Though the financial crisis my family faced eventually resolved through a costly personal loan, I later learned about what remained was a changed landscape. Marissa moved back home, forced to face responsibility for the first time. Our family ties were fractured but slowly, on my terms. I was rebuilding my life. 6 months after establishing my financial boundaries, life began to transform in ways I had only dreamed of. My name is Sorrel, and standing in the kitchen of my new condo, a modern 2-bedroom nestled in a neighborhood I once thought unreachable, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Sunlight filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over the space that was truly mine, purchased with money I earned and protected. Daniel leaned against the counter, a coffee mug in hand, watching me with a gentle smile. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is," I replied, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Without the constant drain of supporting my family, my financial situation improved dramatically. Just 3 months earlier, I had been promoted to senior manager at my firm, a milestone that once seemed distant but now felt within reach. With guidance from my financial advisor, I had met every savings goal, from rebuilding my emergency fund to making progress toward a down payment on a home. The condo itself was a symbol of my newfound independence. Every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration reflected intention rather than compromise. Here, I was free from the weight of past expectations and manipulations. My relationship with Daniel had grown stronger through the storm we weathered together. He had been my unwavering support, offering empathy without judgment, respecting my difficult choices. The small velvet box hidden in my desk drawer, a promise of a future we both dreamed of, was a testament to the confidence I now felt in our shared path. The family dynamic had shifted, too, albeit slowly. After months of minimal contact, I suggested meeting my parents in a neutral setting, a coffee shop downtown. Daniel accompanied me, sitting nearby to offer silent support. The reunion was awkward, the conversation tentative. My mother looked older, the stress of their financial recalibration evident in the lines around her eyes. My father's usual commanding presence had softened to weary uncertainty. They shared the adjustments they had made. The family home, too costly without my subsidies, had been sold, downsized to a modest townhouse. My parents faced a new reality. My mother had taken a part-time job after 2 decades of unemployment, a humble step, but one she spoke of with a rare hint of pride. I made clear boundaries meetings in public places, scheduled phone calls, and strict rules against discussing finances unless they demonstrated real progress toward independence. They agreed, perhaps out of necessity, perhaps beginning to understand the damage caused by past behaviors. Marissa's journey was more complicated, forced to face responsibility for the first time. She had secured a modest position at a small marketing firm, maintaining it longer than ever before. Our relationship remained strained but opened the door for tentative reconciliation, marked by a simple text, "Got my first raise today." did it on my own. As for me, I found peace in the legacy Grandpa James left behind. The books and fishing gear, once painful reminders, now adorned my home office and guest room, symbols of the man who truly saw my worth. Together with Daniel, we planned a dinner to celebrate this new chapter, inviting friends to share in the joy of a life reclaimed. In quiet moments, I contemplated the future, considering starting my own accounting practice focused on empowering women financially. "Sounds perfect," Daniel said, squeezing my hand. "If anyone can manage risk wisely, it's you." The boundaries I had set were painful to establish, but opened space for growth, possibility, and a life defined by choice rather than obligation. The inheritance I gave myself, the gift of self-respect and autonomy, had yielded rewards far beyond any monetary value. This was my life, finally, truly, my own. This story reminds us of a powerful truth setting. Healthy boundaries is not selfish, it is essential for our well-being and growth. Sometimes, protecting ourselves means making hard choices that others might not understand, but true respect begins when we honor our own worth. Sorrel's journey shows us that reclaiming control over our lives can lead to healing, independence, and a brighter future. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to attack or defame any individual, family, or organization. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. If this story moved you or sparked a thought, please let us know by commenting below. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more stories that inspire and entertain. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.